But let's focus on the whole DEI world, right? For those that don't know what that stands for, it's diversity, equity, and inclusion as well. But that is something. It's interesting. 4 or 5 years ago, if we had a client that said, "I'm looking to hire this position, and I need to have a male ages 30 to 35," we would first of all kind of take a step back and say, "Wait a minute, that's not what we're doing here. We're going to present you the best talent. That's what we're all about. We're not going to be focusing on a certain gender or ethnicity or age or anything like that." Nowadays, the great thing is that companies are saying we want to hire a diversity candidate, which is kind of the term that's tend to be used, because we want to do a better job of diversifying our organization. We've realized that we don't have enough women or people of color or younger folks or whatever it might be as part of our executive team, and we need to do a better job of that. And so there's a much more of a realization out there that's required. And that should be done. It should be done. It should have been happening years ago, but at least it's now happening more and more than what it has been. So I'm curious, from your standpoint, Danielle, what is that? Is that kind of an issue for you out there at Clari? Are there certain roles that have been identified as roles where you can help to increase diversity? And then what are you seeing on the candidate side?
Yeah, DE&I is a huge initiative for us. It was long before it was the thing a lot of organizations were focusing on. And that's mainly driven by our CEO and just our culture in general. And, we've done quite a few things. And yes, it is absolutely prevalent on the candidate side. I hear from my team constantly that they're being asked, hey, what measures are you taking? To the point of candidates asking, more targeted questions about what really matters to them. And so, I very much have encouraged all of the recruiting team to really think through and have sound bites surrounding that, because we do need to have and address what we are doing and where we can be doing more. But just a couple of things that we've done personally on our side is, we've taken out the university requirement, right? It's just kind of something that is not given to all candidates, and it should be looked at as it should not be a deciding factor, even on our engineering side, frankly. Executive roles, all of them. The other thing we've done is take out, language that is gender bias, which was a huge thing. And so there's actually free tools where you can take a job description, throw that job description into the tool, and it will show you, hey, are you using the word rock star? Are you using, there's just a lot of things you don't even know because of unconscious bias or because of, a myriad of reasons that you wouldn't realize that maybe you were kind of leaning or pointing in one direction or the other. It's very common for sales to be, focused on male-centric language. And so you just don't even have that preview. And I think the other thing too is, what does diversity mean, right? That's a conversation we're constantly asking ourselves, because maybe that means that we aren't hiring a Harvard grad from the Bay Area, right, for a role. And maybe that means that we're hiring a woman of color for a role. And so we really take DE&I incredibly serious. We track that measurement. And we have done for a long time. And I think, not hiding or being naive, those things are not working anymore in the marketplace. And if you're going to choose that approach, you're going to probably see attrition, not only in your current workforce, but folks wanting to come to you. So really hitting the nail on the head and being able to discuss, kind of the efforts that you are doing. We actually have had several, unconscious bias trainings. We've had DE&I training. We have had that as a company wide. I know, HubSpot actually does a training surrounding DE&I specifically as part of their onboarding. And that's something we went, ooh, that's a really great idea. Let's go ahead and do that too. And so taking some best practices from other organizations around you, I think is really a good measure for sure.
Yeah, and I think also, to your point, the vast majority of hiring managers and companies are not deliberately trying to screen people out based on those things that we talked about. But I think to your point, Danielle, a lot of the language that we don't even realize in there tends to, in a lot of cases, lean more male, right? Where, comments like aggressive or superstar or rock star or things that you don't really think much of. It's the same terminology that's been used in job specs for decades, honestly. But, stats will tell you that typically a man will apply to a job if he has 50% of the requirements in the job description. Typically, females will apply only if they have at least 80%. Right. So the real simple thing to do is to look at your job descriptions. How are they being written? Let's look at the language. Is there wording in our job descriptions that we've been using for the last 20 years that's really kind of out of sorts, right? It doesn't make sense. It's not really reflective of what's happening out there. And other thing is that, while it's important for companies to rely on their ecosystems and internal referral sources to get, folks to fill positions, that also creates a bit of bias. Stanford is a great example of that, in the Bay Area in particular. There are a lot of people in that region that are from Stanford, especially the folks of the IT folks and the software developers and engineers, which is fantastic. Nothing against Stanford or the Bay Area, but when you ask somebody to look at their network to bring somebody else in for another position in the company, and their entire ecosystem is other Stanford grads in the Bay Area, you tend to have this kind of snowball effect where the same kinds of people get hired again and again. So you really have to find ways to deliberately diversify your reach, if you will, to make a difference out there.
It has to come from the top down too, and the bottom up. I mean, really both. I mean, everybody needs to be on board with the shift and be on board with the idea that we are going to approach things differently, and having really frank conversations, about it.